Hey, everybody, you want to talk about something fun? Let's talk about volunteers and committees, mobilizing volunteers and committees. And let's talk about it with a member of our team. We have the great fortune of having Matt Ashley, he's a director of our fundraising partnerships, on our team. He has been a part of so many different committees raising money for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. But we have the good fortune of having him on our team. Hopefully, he stays forever, as a matter of fact. But we're going to talk about maximizing the potential of your volunteers and committees, how to keep them motivated, keep really, really strict agendas, communication, and really value the time of your volunteers and committees, and why you can never have too many volunteers and too many, hands on deck, so to speak. So thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Hey Nonprofits. Let's talk about volunteers and committees with our very own Matt Ashley. So the one thing I thought about on the way to the studio was like every organization, volunteers and or committees, I was talking to Bailey about this earlier, every organization has some kind of relationship with volunteers, committees. There are more, which is your experience, when you're working with RMEF, everything was like volunteer and committee driven. You know what I mean? Right. So you have a tremendous amount of experience with that. You were doing, how many events a year were you doing?
Probably 20. I mean, different events. I mean, of different kinds.
So you were working with 20 different volunteer and committee groups.
Probably somewhere around there that I was exposed to or helping with. I mean,
yeah, exactly. So how do we maximize our relationship with volunteers, committees, all the above? One thing I talked to Bailey about was like having clear cut, communication from the jump, having folks understand what their role is, what the committee's role is, what the volunteers' roles are. Where would you start, for instance, if you're meeting like a volunteer committee group, for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, are they established or not established? I guess I'll probably ask a bunch of questions. Have they done this before? Are we kind of rallying for kind of a new cause?
Let's rally for a new cause.
New cause? Okay. My mind goes to kind of setting the baseline of people need to have an understanding of why you're there and a strong belief in, because volunteering there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's volunteers are amazing. And a lot of times I just looked at them, the things they did, and they would do more than you could pay someone to do. And that was done because they believed in the cause, believed in the mission and what they were there to accomplish. So yeah, I would say, really establishing, and having, if it's a new organization or your existing organization, having those core values and, being able to communicate, what you're here to do and what, clearly to that, new group of people that are being exposed to your mission, and being able to articulate how they can help, having them, built into an understanding of what their role is to making that contribution to propel the mission forward. So that's, I think, the first thing, being able to really sell the mission to those folks, not in a bad way, but they need to understand why they're there. Or maybe you're trying to rally the troops to, create that group. Yeah, I think that's the very first thing, the most important thing. If you don't set that baseline, you're built on a poor foundation.
Shaky foundation.
And people there's so many things going on that they can spend their time or commit their time to. And if you don't do a good job in explaining that, there's something else that needs their attention, or they'll feel that their worth is better, their time is better invested somewhere else. They'll be making a difference elsewhere.
So a lot of this is like just managing people and expectation and all these things, that sound kind of cliche, but can be applied in a lot of other walks of life. You're working with people. Typically you'll find, right? Like, tell me if I'm wrong, but typically you'll find like volunteer bases like this, committees, volunteers, they are bought in. So now we'll change to the folks that, it's already established. Yeah. You're coming in, you're working with a group that's already been there. Same thing, just really clear cut understanding on what we're doing, what we're focusing on, things like that, tasks at hand, all the above.
Yeah. Yep. I would say that the next step for me in that case would be looking at how we're running our operations, how we're running our meetings, how is our planning set up, what are we forecasting as the milestones to prepare for whatever we're trying to accomplish throughout the year, whether it's a fundraising event or, something else. Because the quickest way to lose volunteer participation are people that are, oftentimes volunteers they're going above and beyond in their own personal commitments, and they want to do more. And a lot of times I see, so they hold their time sacred. I mean, anyone should. So when you're not utilizing that time to the best of your abilities. You have committee meetings that run really long or disorganized where you talk about the same thing 3 meetings in a row. It's a very quick way to lose your best people. So really setting those, standards of, hey, here's the time we're going to allot to, have our meetings and do what we need to get done here. Extracurricular, conversations and activities can take place before or after, but we got to kind of, buckle down and do this in that time. Having an agenda, sending it out beforehand. And it sounds like little things, but it really is a big thing over time, especially as that community grows of volunteers that you have. Scheduling those meetings out, being very clear of, where they're going to be, what time it is, because people, they'll put them on their calendar and they're counting on rearranging their personal schedules to, make those contributions to your organization. So I guess as just a whole, getting yourself very organized as a committee and as an organization. So you're utilizing that very valuable time of your volunteers to the best of your ability, and they feel valued and that their time is well invested as well.
Can't overstate just the idea. Once again, like you said, it's not like earth shattering. We've heard this before, but valuing people's time. Yeah. They're there for a reason, right? I mean, that's a great reminder in any walk, but especially in this one, right? Where it's like, these folks are giving their time. That's what their equity is in this case, right? And you laid out, the clear communication, making sure that things are scheduled properly, agendas, all the above. What are some massive don'ts that folks should avoid at all costs that you've seen that have been, real big misses when it comes to mobilizing a committee, a volunteer group, what have you, getting ready for an event, for instance?
Going back to making sure everyone has a role, essentially, no matter how small. I think it's very wise to, set how you're going to vote for things. I've seen committees that they make a decision and then, someone doesn't like that and they readdress it, down the road. And pretty soon, the person that was invested in the first meeting isn't there and they feel like someone's went behind their back. I would say, have those procedures set. So when you make decisions, you need to kind of stick to those unless you need to come back to it. Gosh, I would say being wise about assigning tasks. I guess I just want to reiterate on that. Have a hierarchy of leadership within your small committee and understand your roles and what people are going to do. Try to assign, if it's an existing organization, you have someone that comes in, they heard about you and they come to your first meeting, pair them up with someone that's been there and done that kind of as a mentor. It's not as easy for them just to step away. And so assigning all the individuals to some kind of subcommittee so they have some kind of buy-in or task and they know they're helping you accomplish, whatever their role is a really big thing, because I've just seen time and time again, people that they step away and what they would bring up is, I just feel like I wasn't being heard or listened to and I wasn't contributing. So that'd be a major thing, I would say. Having strong takeaways. I guess I'm going to all the basics, Trevor, because I see this just where it's missed. Yeah. I mean, as simple as action items at your committee meeting, and then following up on those action items that were assigned to your chair roles or subcommittees or however you have that, hierarchy distributed, where you're making, movement and going forward each time you meet. I've seen groups come together when they're not as organized and they feel like they're addressing all the same issues week after week or month after month. And it's just really, you lose good people fast if they feel like, well, I'm just spinning my wheels here and we're just all over the place. Where if you're very well organized and moving forward, everyone feels like they have a part to contribute, good things happen for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a giant team building exercise.
For sure. I think
you know what I mean, right? I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. Making sure everyone's valued. I love that. For folks that are we get this question a lot, as a matter of fact, on like the webinars and at different times in passing from folks. Hey, I'm planning my first event, or should I even have an event? We're the best, pool of applicants, so to speak, to find those kinds of people that care for the mission, that want to be a part of it, what have you. Where would you tell someone to start?
Depending on, I guess, on what your organization does. But I would say, seek business people typically in the community, because they probably are roped into 3 or 4 other things they're similar to this, but they can be very good advocates. They have, strong networks. They can pool their resources, really leveraging their community of people to get awareness about your organization, your new organization. I would say find a place to host, kind of a kickoff committee meeting gathering. Make sure you find somewhere that's, quiet, that you can really, communicate that what I first spoke to of, what the mission is. I've seen groups that have, those kind of first initial gatherings, and it's at a bar or, somewhere that's loud, and there's just distractions in the room. So somewhere quiet that you can really have an intimate, conversation and visit with those people and get to know one another.
We're not saying don't bring the wine, but you get my point. Yeah, you get
Yeah,
my point.
exactly.
Yeah.
Just so I've seen, groups gather in places where there's just music in the background and you're talking over, a crowd of people, and it just is very hard to communicate that why we're here, what we're trying to do, what your role will be. This is what we can accomplish in this time frame. All those conversations when you're talking over whatever else is going on in the background.
A jukebox.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the first thing. I think just pick a date and try to get as many people there.
Start with the local business community. I love that. I think it's a great place to
Yeah,
start
and
at
it's
any
really
time when you're talking engaging donors, volunteers, committee, the whole nine, right?
exactly. Yeah, and it's pulling in, initially, just people in your network, trying to get them there. That you don't want to pull people in that have no interest in your cause or won't be there for the long term. Yeah, there's just you want to pull people in you believe will be there to support the organization. Sometimes if you're having an event, you're kind of all hands on deck. You're taking anyone you can find to help execute the event, I guess. But really in that core committee, especially when you're starting, you want a really strong foundation, especially in your leadership. Pick people that are the right fits for whatever those leadership roles that you have. I would say probably, I'd rather be patient and find the right people for those roles instead of just putting someone in them, because you'll create problems down the road if you're not setting that stage correctly initially in your organization.
People are complicated. Let's say you have an event right now. Let's say you're doing an annual event or what have you, or 2 events a year or what have you. Is an event when it's taking place and there's folks that are in attendance that maybe you haven't met before, or maybe they're local business people and they're just coming to your event, they're being exposed to for the first time, and you like them and you can tell they actually care. Is that a good moment to introduce yourself and start mobilizing? Is that a good place to do that?
I think it's a good place to plant the seed. Typically events can be pretty chaotic, I guess. There's a lot going on throughout the evening. Not chaotic in a bad way, but there's just a lot happening in a large fundraising event. So it's a great place to shake hands, put a face to a name, introduce yourself, kind of plant that seed. Hey, we look what we're accomplishing. We'd love to have you, because if you're doing it right, you should have some of those moments in your event where you're speaking to your mission. And typically, right after that or later in the evening, people are, seeing what the impact you're making, and they've heard that mission speak of yourself or the speaker or whoever communicated that within your event. So it is an opportunity you can't miss. Leave their information, get their name, but it'd be very wise of you to set up a time shortly after that where you grab lunch, or, a more intimate setting where you can communicate, with that individual person or a couple or a small group, in more depth, I guess. And I wouldn't wait long, because, someone's interested.
Strike while the iron's hot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Would you ever profile them based on how much they gave the night of?
As far as pulling them into the committee, it depends. I could argue it both ways. There's definitely some individuals that, the monetary value that they're giving that night's a direct, correlation in the time they're willing to give. And I would say other cases, it's not a direct relationship. They want to commit their fiscal, what they can give monetarily, where other people, they might not have that capacity within their, personal finances, but they're there to give, blood, sweat, and tears to your organization. And that person over time, the value that they can bring is even higher than the person that made a significant gift that one night, because that person can rally the other people like that individual that gave that night and help you accomplish more. So I would say it's case by case. I guess I'll take the cop out.
Silly question. Can you have too many volunteers? Can you have too big of a committee? All the above?
As long as you're extremely well organized, more hands make light work, but it goes back to that foundation of bigger and bigger you get, the more, you need to have a well-oiled machine of, how you organize your leadership in your group, how you set up your subcommittees, how those subcommittees meet outside your main meetings, because those meetings can, if you don't have that set schedule and time frame, you have a very large committee. There's a lot of people, have a lot of opinions. So I guess just you have to be more and more diligent, I guess, in how you're structure is, how you conduct your meetings. And as long as you do that, I mean, the more people, the better, as long as they're committed there and there for the right reasons. Because typically the events are where you need kind of all hands on deck. But it's amazing. You can accomplish a lot if you have quite a few people built in.
Makes sense. When it comes to like tenure, term limit type thing, do you ever put something in place where it's like, hey, this committee, we recycle the talent, so to speak, after so many years? Or does that happen organically? Or just kind of give me some feedback there with what you've seen.
If you should set term limits or kind of,
I
think you should, whether you have that in place or not, you should always have someone training up behind your leaders. Almost a 2D leadership perspective is what we would say. So if you have a chapter chair, they should be, have in mind who is a good candidate, to take over their role, because, volunteerism, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and, people can't do it forever. There's a lot of knowledge that's acquired in volunteering over time, especially that leader, if they can document how we do this. I've seen leaders that have departed quickly that we didn't anticipate.
Life.
For whatever reason. Life. And there's a lot of acquired knowledge that's not passed on directly unless you have that person kind of shadowing, those leaders ready to step in and take over the reins, because inevitably you probably have leaders in your organization that, they shoulder a lot of the responsibility of whatever your cause is. And if they haven't kind of documented that or are sharing that, you're kind of starting over from ground zero if you don't have a good way to pass on that information.
Right. It could be a huge, time consumer, of course. Yeah, life inevitably happens. I really like what you said with just having like someone like behind everyone, just kind of like learning the ropes, so to speak, of what this person does. Or I think is interesting because it goes back to what you said about like acquiring good volunteers and good committee members. Start in the business community. It's a really great place to mobilize these kinds of folks and to find the right talent, so to speak.
Right.
Seems like it.
Sure.
Yeah. Pretty normal stuff. Good stuff. We're doing a webinar about the same thing. It's gonna be a little bit more long form, but any questions you have about volunteers, committees, if we can help, email Matt directly, matt@hgafundraising.com. You can email me, trevor@hgafundraising.com, and I'll intro you to Matt. But but we're here to help. We're happy to help. I appreciate the time, brother. Thanks so much for making time for us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you love our podcast, click the download button, rate us, and follow us on social media at HGA Fundraising. Get out there, start fundraising, and raise more money. See you next time.